Hi everyone, my name is Catherine McCoy and I am a mental health therapist located in North Carolina. I am recording this video to accompany a free document that I'm going to have on my website. This document is intended for anyone who is considering having a challenging or difficult conversation with a family member, friends, or family members, right? The document's title is called Steps to Planning a Family Intervention, and this video is really going to help walk through the steps and add some extra tidbits that are not typed in on here. So, step one in planning a family intervention or planning a difficult conversation, right? Prepare. That's part of what this is. So, what is the subject or the main objective of the conversation taking place? Why is it important that this happens, right? Another question that could be asked to rephrase around that is, what is the goal, right? Remember, the goal has to be realistic. Keep that in mind, okay? Also, consider what has and has not worked in past conversations with this individual, whether they be a family member, family members, friend, or friends, right? Going back to past conversations that may have had conflict, right? When did the conflict arise? What was said before the conflict arose? Really revisiting those things in the effort to develop a strategy. Step two, manage expectations. Acknowledge the truth of the conversation needing to take place. Don't allow anger, anxiety, hopelessness, frustration to take over the conversation and lead it in the wrong direction, right? I'm not saying that you can't have feelings, right? It's okay to be anxious, right? It's okay to be upset or frustrated, but managing your expectations so that when those feelings do arise, you don't allow them to take over the conversation and just drive it into an opposite direction that you had no intention in going in the first place, right? So you want the conversation to be productive. So acknowledge the truth and why this conversation needs to happen. What does that look like? That may look like some statements that you give yourself or talk to yourself about before the conversation takes place. For example, although the conversation will be difficult, it will result in blank, blank, blank. An example, more specific example could be, although this conversation will be difficult, it will result in a healthier relationship, right? So manage your expectations appropriately. 3, set a time, place, and duration for the conversation. So, time and place are important so that everyone involved is free of distractions, really able to contribute to the conversation taking place. Duration is also important because, one, it's going to help you stay on track with the goal, objective, or subject for the conversation taking place. And two, again, with distractibility and concentration levels. So for adults, 1 hour is appropriate. That may not seem like a lot of time, but it is a good amount of time if you already know what the objective or goal of the conversation will be. And as I said before, it'll really help you stay on topic and not let emotional distress veer the conversation off in a different direction. If children are included in this conversation, consider shortening the amount of time, the duration that the conversation will take place, just so you're able to maintain their concentration, maintain their attention. 4, set ground rules. So, setting ground rules can keep the conversation on track and help to avoid conflicts if possible, if used correctly. What do I mean by used correctly? Ground rules should be implemented and everyone should hold each other accountable to those ground rules. So, some examples of ground rules could be no interrupting, no shouting, no personal attacks, and the list could really go on and on. It's based on preference, right? So one, the ground rules have to have some sort of back end to them. Not going to necessarily say consequence, but they have to have some back end to them. So if shouting does occur, one, again, holding everybody accountable. Even the one who is facilitating the conversation isn't allowed to break the ground rules. And then what is going to happen if the ground rules are broken? Maybe the conversation needs to come to an end and be revisited at a different time once everyone is in a better space to continue. So, holding everyone accountable, very, very important. Having a back end to what happens if the ground rules are broken, not just saying, hey, I noticed that you are starting to raise your voice. Would you mind lowering your voice, lowering your tone? Because, we set the rule that there was not going to be any shouting, and that doesn't help us to really talk about this thing that needs to be discussed, right? Another thing with ground rules that I feel personally is very important is inviting everyone to have input on the rules, allowing everyone to be in agreement or add additional rules that everyone can agree upon, right? So if, for instance, one ground rule that could be added that may not be problematic for anyone in the conversation could be, no personal attacks, right? I don't want to be personally attacked in this conversation, or refraining from cursing. Maybe, right? So those are good things to implement around ground rules. And again, even if you are the one facilitating, checking in around the rules and making sure that everyone is in agreement with upholding them is going to be very important to the conversation being productive as well. Okay, now on to the next step, bringing up the issue, right? Bringing up the issue, it may be hard, it may be difficult to some extent, but approach it with collaboration in mind, right? Remember that this person that you're talking to is your friend, is your loved one, is your family member, and that you can talk about the issue, but also be open to hearing and understanding what's being said, what's being put out there. Also being open towards collaborating towards a common solution, not just one that you have in mind, especially if we're talking about adults, right? So you can't make anyone do anything, but being open. Okay. The second part of bringing up the issue is knowing that it's okay to air out your grievances, but minding your language is very important. You want to avoid accusatory and demanding language or phrasing. So, what are some accusatory or demanding phrases? You need. You made me feel. Instead, speak in first person. I want, I would like, I feel. So an example of that could be, you need to do better. I would like to see you be the best version of yourself. You all decide which one sounds better. Okay. Moving on. Remember, keep in mind, listen. A lot of the times when talking with others, we may not be giving much thought to whether we're listening or not. We may be preparing our own response or rebuttal. But remember that the focus of this conversation taking place is not just to bring up an issue, but to be able to listen and reflect on what your loved one, friend, family member, whoever is saying so that you could have an understanding. So focus on listening, reflecting, and observing rather than spending time composing your next statement. Next, examine your assumptions. So, what is this about? Use self-awareness to refrain from acting on assumptions, right? Sometimes this shows up in the way of someone may say something and you transcribe or like decode what they say into something that they did not verbally say to you. And so in these instances, don't act on your assumption of what they meant by what they said. Seek clarification. A very exact or specific example I can give is, let's see, someone saying, "You're calling me stupid." And they're like, "No, I didn't say that." Right? So instead of acting on the assumption that someone has in some indirect way stated something, ask them, I hear that you say I behave in ways that is, etc., etc. Is it the right understanding that you believe me to not be making the smartest decisions, right? And usually what will happen in those instances is the person they know that you're listening, one, because you used what they said in order to bring up a question that you had, some clarification that you are seeking. And two, they may dive deeper into what they really meant using the statement that they said before. So no, when I said that, what I really meant was I want you to do better. I want to see you achieve these things, and I know that you're capable of doing that. And so then the assumption goes from they're saying I'm stupid to they want better for me, which is much more positive and could likely have a better outcome. So seek clarification. 8, this is very simple. Be okay with the outcome. Be okay with the outcome. That may take some time. It may take some work on your end. It may take no work on your end, but be okay with the outcome of the conversation. 9, ending the conversation. Conclude with a summary of the conversation. Thank your family members, friend, or friends for their time and willingness to have the discussion in the first place. Remind them that you love them and care for them. And also assess at the very end, does another family meeting or intervention or conversation need to occur? If so, you'll be able to move forward using these same steps again. If not, hopefully you have the understanding that you need in order to move on from whatever was the conflict or difficulty or issue in the first place. A bonus that I'm going to give would have to be that if you are religious or spiritual, I invite you to open or close the conversation with that piece, either whether it be for yourself or for the group as a whole. So, for example, a family that may be very religious may open the conversation with prayer and close with prayer. If it is something personal that you align with religiously or spiritually, maybe before going into the conversation, preparing yourself in that way, right? Or after the conversation, debriefing and decompressing in that way. So yeah, I hope this was helpful to someone out there. Please feel free to comment, like, subscribe. I don't put many videos up here, but I was very happy to bring this to the table and offer this as a free resource. If you are looking for it, look in the description below. I will have it referenced to my website. So thank you all so much for your time. Peace and blessings.